Welcome one and all, my name is Tawess and today we'll be talking about this guy, the Black Knight, the knightiest of the mechs. It's a Black Knight. So, basically, we're gonna make a Black Knight into a Green Knight. And how are we gonna do that, you might wonder? Well, we're going to start off with priming it, which we already did basically, it's already primed. Not that you can tell because it was great to begin with, but it has been primed with a brush-on primer. My go-to for priming. I know most people use airbrushes or rattle cans. I use brush-on primer. It works for me. Literally, it works for me. So, we're gonna go through today and see how you can do this quick and easy. Again, we are going for tabletop ready, not paint competition ready. So, basically, we're gonna start off with Elf Green, the greenest of green. Very much a standard army green, because this is after all a battle mech and not anything fancy. So a flat green should be good. It has been diluted slightly to be more runny, and this is, as always, army painter paint, so the amount of pigment is fantastic. So you see, you get fully green mech, and don't worry about it looking a bit shoddy, because we're going to hit this with some wash, and we're going to hit it with some more paint. And speaking of wash, this is the next step. Once it's painted, you take the mech and you apply, in this case, army wash. Oh, actually have to look that up. Military shader, not army wash, military shader, which is a dark green wash, and that is to avoid changing the tone too much. It's gonna be glosses to begin with, don't need to change tone on it. But yeah, basically just slap it on. Try to avoid pooling on the flat surfaces, because washes are mostly designed to run into recesses, and battle mechs have a lot of flat surfaces. So if you see that pooling up, you can just go in with the brush and just wipe it off. It saves you time in the end. And well, we are going to go over everything once anyway and make sure that it's tidied up, but this makes next step a lot easier. Also, don't forget to dilute your shader a little bit so it runs easier. Water does perfectly fine there. So, I mean, it's not much more to this step. Make sure you hit all the surfaces, get them nice and soaked in. I mean, you could technically just dip it in wash if you have a lot of it. I don't. I use a brush. So, as you can see, once it's soaked in properly, you leave it to dry, and this is important. Shaders take a lot longer to dry, so you don't want to go poking and prodding around there before it's properly dry, because you're going to get contamination on your brush and stuff. So just let it sit and dry and do its thing. Once that is done, we are going to go back to the original color, dilute it a bit more, get it a bit more runny, and we're going to go over all the surfaces that looks mucky. This is where you're correct if you had pooling, for example, if the shader stayed on the flat surface too much. You just go over it with another coat of the paint, making sure it looks even and nice. And so try to avoid hitting the recesses, because that will just undo the work you just did. But keep on the flats. It's time consuming, but trust me, depending a bit on what color you use, green isn't that sensitive, but other colors do need this step. If you don't want a very, what's the word for it? A very splotchy, stained look, basically. Nothing wrong with that. If that's just the look you're going for, that you don't need to do this step. If you want it to look more solid, you have to do this. Or have to, but you should do this. It makes things look nicer. Now, once we're done with this is where the fun part comes in. This will take our fine detail brush. Up until now you could use pretty much any brush, but now out comes the detail brush. Because now we're going to highlight all of the panels by painting a brighter color on the very edges of them. This will help them stand out and create more of a three-dimensional effect. Now, this only stage that you can basically spend as much time on as you want. If you just want a quick and dirty one, you could basically just go with a dry brush. If we create a dusty and sort of dirty look. Or you can do this middle step, which I'm doing, with just detail brush and just brush the edges. Very nice, to be quite honest. And if you really want to go into this, you can pick a point where the light hits it and make every edge that is in the light hitting it brighter and the other ones darker. As I said, it's a step that you basically work on forever, and this is basically where we separate tabletop ready from, well, painting competition ready. As you can see, it doesn't do a massive amount, but it gives it this sort of sense of three-dimensionality. Goddamn English today. And that's what we want. A sense of depth. And it's kind of nice. Now, on to painting the weapons. I decided they're going to be gold, because gold and green goes well together. No real other reason. Well, that and the fact that I prepped the gold for this, because I initially thought this was going to be another Royal Guard mech. But at the last moment I decided I want to paint it green instead. They are just blue. I just wanted it green. And they have gold weapons, so I was like, yeah, let's continue that theme. Gold weapons. Now, while Games Workshop's metal paints are generally better, Armor Painter metals are still good enough that you basically just can slap them on. Very high pigmented. So, we have painted everything gold, so that should be gold. And technically this is not gold, this is technically a bronze color, but it dries goldish. And it's a good base for a darker gold. And then it's on to highlighting it. And this time just do something very simple. It can be hard to see if I have very much light on this one. But I go in with a brighter gold and just put a stripe on the top where the light hits it, making it look brighter. See, very hard to see on this, and we're going to undo a bit of this later, but it gives this sensation of light hitting it and it's shining brighter. It's a nice, quick and dirty way to highlight gold, or any metal, by the way. You can do this on silver too, or technically bronze, or copper, you know. So, with that in place, we now try to tackle the visor. And I had an idea of making it like poppy green. And then I realized I didn't have any good color to balance it with, because that's a really tiny area. So I had a bright idea of hitting it with some military shader. And that's a bad idea. As you can see, it was way too dark. I didn't dilute it enough. Try to wipe some of the way, and in the end it looks decent. Now, with that done, we are basically just going on about cleaning things up, because we had a few places where we had gone gold on the green and green on the gold, and the focus just decided to leave me at this point, and it didn't come back. But yeah, cleaning up, making sure you have a few different little sneaky patches where the gold has gotten onto the green, and taking care of that, making sure things looks nice and tidy. Tidying up does a lot actually, and it doesn't take much time. Now, of course, again, here's the time you can spend a lot more time just going on picking up small things. And now we just hit the weapons with a wash from the Games Workshop, which is Brightland Flesh Shade. And why is this? Because it's gloss. I have two, one Brightland Flesh Shade and a non-oil gloss for metal parts, because it leaves this very reflective surfaces, making it look a bit more alive. And I like it for metals. I hate it for everything else, but I like it for metals. That's pretty much the only part we use to EV paint for. But you need it. It makes all the difference in metals actually. And yeah, On to the beauty shots. And there we have it. The completed green Black Knight. Ready for action. Now, as you can see, we got a bit too much seepage on the face there, but I'm gonna touch it up later. And all in all, this took perhaps 40 minutes. As you can see, this is definitely a 40 minutes paint job. I'm not pretending it to be anything else, but the idea was to get a quick paint job done and show you how you can easily punch one of these out and get it looking good for the tabletop. Again, we're not aiming for any painting competition here, but you know. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, and do play fair. Bye!